Hi, in today's video I'm going to be building Emacs 30 from the master branch with pure GTK support for Wayland and native compilation as well. And we're going to be doing this in Fedora, but I'll also show you the package names on Ubuntu. So let's switch across to Emacs and actually go through the steps. And don't worry, this doesn't actually take a long time to do. You'd think that compiling Emacs would take hours and hours. It doesn't, it takes a couple of minutes. So first step is to actually clone the Emacs repository. We do that by running git clone and then the path to the Emacs repository down here. Now this is going to take 6 or 7 minutes to actually clone the repository, and as I said, actually cloning the repository takes longer than building Emacs. So that's the first step. The next step is actually changing directory into the Emacs repository we've just downloaded by running cd Emacs. After that, we're going to actually need to install some packages. So on Fedora, what we need to do is run sudo dnf group install and in double quotes development tools, and that's going to install a lot of tools that we need to actually compile Emacs. I'll show you the equivalent on Ubuntu, but I'm just going to run through this. So we install the development tools, and then after that we run sudo dnf build dep Emacs, and what this does is this actually installs all the, or at least most of the dependencies that we're going to need to install Emacs. So that's the first two steps: installing development tools and then dnf build dependencies Emacs. What we're then going to do is actually install some packages. This command should take care of most of the packages that we need, but we're just going to make extra sure. So these are all the image library packages that we need. And you can actually find a list of these in the Emacs install. Okay, so this is a list of the image libraries that are actually needed. And these are a list of the package names on Debian and Ubuntu distribution. So the packages are slightly different on Fedora. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is installing all these things. So like libpng, libjpeg, libtiff, giflib, svg support, webp support, ImageMagick, and ImageMagick devel. So again, these package names are different on Fedora than they are on Ubuntu. So check the install documentation, but I'll run through the Ubuntu steps as well. So that's the packages that we need to install for image support. And then these are the packages that we're actually going to install for Emacs. Now, most of these should be automatically installed, but as I said, we're just going to run these just to double check. So what we've got here is stuff like autoconf, gnutils, gtk devel. That's needed for building Emacs as a pure GTK application running natively on Wayland. Jansen devel is for JSON. Then we've got libgccjit, which is for the native compilation of ELISP files. We've got libmpc devel, and that's for MPC support for the music player daemon. And we've got ncurses and text info for actually building the documentation. So we install those packages, and then after we've done that, what we do is we run autogen. But before we do that, what we need to do is export some variables so that the Emacs configuration script can find the location of GCC so that it can use libgccjit for native compilation of ELISP files. So what we need to do is actually find out the location of GCC, and we can do that simply by running which GCC, and as you can see, it's installed in user bin GCC, and we can check the version by running gcc -- version, which in my case, if I spelt it properly, version would output 13.1.1. So what we need to do before we run the autogen script is we run export cc equals user bin gcc and export cxx equals user bin gcc. Once we've done that, what we then do is run the autogen script. So that's ./autogen.sh. And then after we've done that, we can actually move on to the config. So if you run configure --help, it's actually going to print out all the options you can use. And what happens is it will use a lot of these things by default, but we're explicitly going to mention some of them down here in this config. So what we've got here is config with dbus, GIF, JPEG, PNG, RSVG, which is SVG support, TIFF, XFT, GPM, ImageMagick, JSON, widgets, modules, and that's needed for things like vterm, native compilation, pure GTK, and without pop. And the without pop, basically, if you install Emacs 28 on Ubuntu 23.04, what's going to happen is it will actually install postfix. And I don't use GNUS for mail or anything, so I'm just disabling the mail support because I don't use it. And then finally what we do is prefix user local, which I believe is actually the default. So Emacs will be installed in user local bin Emacs. So that's the actual config, that block down there. After we've done that, let me just check there's nothing down here. No. After we do that, we basically run make-j $ and in parentheses nproc. And what's nproc when it's at home? So if I copy that and switch across to the terminal, if I run echo nproc, you'll see it's actually returning 12, and that's the amount of cores I've got in the system. So we just run make-j nproc like that, and that's going to use all your cores to actually build Emacs. And I was expecting to wait for several hours or have to leave it overnight, but it was done in about 5 minutes. And I'm using a Dell XPS 15, I think it's a 2019 model with 16 gig of RAM and an NVIDIA graphics card. And yeah, 5 minutes, so really quick to actually make. So after we've made that, what we do is we actually run Emacs. So Emacs is going to be built in a directory. It's going to be built in the source directory. So in the Git repository, there'll be a source folder, and inside there, that's where Emacs is going to be built. So what we do is we run source /Emacs-Q, and that launches Emacs without using your config file. Okay. Once we've done that, what we can actually do is check that native compilation is actually working by evaluating this block of code here, native comp-available-p xe. You can see down there -t in the bottom left hand corner. So that's enabled. And then we just basically install it, sudo make install. Now, what I'd also recommend doing, if I just switch across to the terminal here, the config file for Emacs follows the XDG specification, so it will be in .config Emacs. And what I would recommend doing is if you've already got Emacs installed, uninstall it. And the other thing that you want to do is move these ELN cache, helper, and transient directories to your desktop, because they're actually going to be rebuilt when we actually open up Emacs. Depending on your setup, if you're using use package and whatever, it will prompt you to actually install all your packages, and then it's actually going to compile all that code for us. So remove all that. And there was a little note down here that I got where you can actually compile ELC files needed in a deferred asynchronous manner, and by adding the following to your init file. But I haven't actually tried this as yet, but I just kept this as a note. So that's it. It literally can be done in less than half an hour, 20 minutes. Cloning the Git repository for Emacs is the thing that takes longest. Actually making Emacs took literally 5 minutes on my setup, and then install another minute or two, and that was it. And here we go, we've got Emacs 30 GTK running on Wayland natively with compilation of the Lisp files, and as you can see, the font rendering is absolutely gorgeous. Much nicer than the default. But what I want to do is actually mention the desktop file. So what's going to happen is when you install this, it will actually create desktop files in user local share applications. So as you can see here, we've got Emacs client.desktop, mail.desktop, Emacs.desktop. And what you can do is just copy these into your local share applications directory. I already have a .config, no, .local share applications Emacs client. So literally all I did was change this line here and put in the full path to the Emacs client, which is user local bin Emacs client. And that's all I needed to do. Keyboard shortcut works fine there from my GNOME keyboard shortcut. So that's literally it. It's really easy, and I was using NixOS and NixPKGs to actually install the latest version of Emacs using the NixPKGs overlay, and to actually build it each time was like about half an hour, whereas doing this and just downloading it literally takes 5 minutes. So doing it manually is a clear winner. There are a variety of ways you can actually get the latest version of Emacs. You can use NixPKGs. There's a Flatpak, but that doesn't integrate very well. There's also a snap. If you're on Ubuntu, you can actually install Emacs as a snap, and that's built by a Canonical employee, and has been going for a couple of years. But I tried the Emacs 30 snap with pure GTK support, and it didn't work. So this is working perfectly. And what I'll do now is actually come across to this article here by this guy called Batsov. I won't try and pronounce his first name, but this is a guide for building Emacs from source with pure GTK on Ubuntu. And it said the package names are different on Ubuntu compared to Fedora. So I'll put a link to this documentation as well. What you can see here, we've got build essential and all those other packages there. Basically same sort of thing: cd Emacs, autogen, configure, pure GTK, make, sudo make install. So that's basically the notes for Ubuntu and Debian. You can see here, this is for native JSON. I'll put a link to this documentation as well, and this is the document I just went through. So really simple. Let's have a quick recap. Clone the repository, change into the directory we created. On Fedora, we install the development tools. We then run sudo dnf build dep Emacs that installs most of the packages that are required for Emacs. But just to double check, we actually also manually install all the image libraries. And again, the name of these image libraries will actually be completely different on Ubuntu. And then what we've got down here is actually the packages needed to be installed for Emacs. And again, most of these should be taken care of by this step, sudo dnf build dependencies Emacs, but I just wanted to make sure. And then finally, we got the autogen. We exported the path to GCC. We ran autogen, and we ran configure help, and then we ran configure with all these options like dbus, gif. Most of these should actually be the default, but I've just specified them just to be on the safe side. And the ones you really want to make sure you've got stuff like with modules, with native compilation, with pgtk, and again without pop. And the prefix user local is actually the default. Then we just ran make -j, used all our cores, checked Emacs was running and working properly, the native compilation is all, you know, set up, and then we just installed it, and that's it. And literally it took me about 20 minutes. Took about 5-6 minutes to download the repo, you know, a couple of minutes just to install the packages. But make, I was expecting to take hours. It literally took about 5 or 6 minutes, and it was all done. So that's installing Emacs 30 from scratch, building it from source with pure GTK support. So it's running as a native Wayland application. It's also got the native compilation of ELISP files, and it is super fast. It's really, really snappy. Okay, here's the documentation that I've just opened. This is a note on Vert Manager. Installing Vert Manager on Fedora, and we've got the. Let me just see if I can. We got the nice new scrolling. The other nice thing is I like is you can actually set the, instead of having a menu up here, what you can actually do is hide the menu up here and actually have an icon. So you can see this little alien. Get the little alien, we actually get the file menu come up. So that's really nice. So Emacs 30 has got a lot of really nice features that you really do want. I believe the 29 branch is actually maybe a couple of weeks away from being released. 29.2, there was a message on Reddit about 2 weeks ago saying it's going to be another couple of weeks before the 29.2 branch is released, and I wasn't actually sure if that would actually make it into the latest version of Fedora 38 or Ubuntu 23.04. So that's why you might actually want to build Emacs from source. And as I said, there is actually also a snap. I didn't even know there was a snap, but if I come across here, you can also install snaps on Fedora if you really wanted. But I think there's issues with how snaps work on Fedora. They're not sandboxed or something. But as you can see up here, and I'll just refresh that. It will actually give you instructions. You can see here, these are actually being built today, so you can actually install the latest version using a snap. So that's how you would do it. You can see down here, these are all the latest versions, 28.2, 29. I did try the pure GTK version about a week or so ago on Ubuntu, and it didn't work, but it's been updated today, so I don't know if that will work. There's also Nix OS. You can also use the Nix package manager. If I can find the community overlay, yeah. So there is an Emacs overlay for Nix PKGs that I have used before, and the problem was it basically didn't compile last time I tried it. So that's why I distro hopped to Fedora. So that is another option if you want the latest version of Emacs. But there's lots of sort of steps you've got to go through to actually set up Nix PKGs, and I think there were actually issues installing Nix PKGs on Fedora with the multi-user install because of SE Linux and all this kind of stuff. And if you're using ButterFS, you'd also have to do something like create a separate subvolume to install Nix into so it didn't interfere with your root snapshots and stuff like that. But that's basically it. It's really easy. Hopefully this document here will actually help you out if you're on Debian. But if you do a search for Emacs pgtk, that's actually the first link. Okay, there's a couple of bits on Reddit down here. So this is some notes on installing pgtk with native comp on Fedora, and I've got a few tips from here. Deathwish Copper. So Copper is like the AUR for Fedora, basically. It's a set of user repositories where people build applications and you can then install them. But I think, as you can see here, this was actually, I think the most popular one on Fedora is Deathwish, and it was last built a month ago and it failed. So I obviously didn't go with that method. So that's why I went with the pure GTK build. If you're on Arch, I think there is a Emacs pure GTK repository. I think if I scroll down, yeah, there's another note here. Okay, yeah. This was another place I got some tips from. So this is the Deathwish repository I was just mentioning. This is from a couple of years ago, and this was just mentioning some of the packages that you actually need for the latest version of Emacs. So Jansen, for example, is required for the new native JSON parser introduced in Emacs 27. And again, this is the he's actually cloning a different repository there. But these are some of the options, as you can see, that I was actually using. And this was the little bit of code that I was mentioning for deferred asynchronous compilation of ELISP files, but I haven't tried that as yet. So again, if you just search for Emacs pgtk, you're going to come across, well, not that many pages. And actually, that's a video I did last year using Nix PKGs. So that's all the steps. Literally take you less than half an hour, depending on your machine. If you've got a really old machine, compiling it might take a bit longer than 5 minutes. But it's totally worth it. The version in DNF search Emacs. Okay, the version here that you can install on Fedora 38 is actually 28.2, and that doesn't have, it's a GTK version, but it's not a pure GTK version. It's not running natively on Wayland, and it does use libgccjit for compilation of ELISP files, but I think there's a difference between 28 and 30 or 29 on the compilation side of things. So that's why I wanted to actually build Emacs from scratch, is because I wanted the latest version with some of the features. So if I just come into my config Emacs directory, so what we've got here bookmarks. We got the early init.el. So what you can actually do is have two files, an early init.el and an init.el, and the early init one's executed first. We can do stuff like inhibit the startup message, hide the menu bars, the toolbars, that kind of thing. We can actually load the theme in here, so I'm loading the Doom Solarized Dark theme. What I also do is I set the initial frame maximized so that when I open up Emacs, it's automatically opened full screen. And then finally, we add the load path for our EmacsLisp directory. And these are some tips that I got from System Crafters. Let me just fill the teacup up. The other one that's really useful is custom set variable initial major mode fundamental mode, and what that does is it makes the initial buffer load faster by setting its mode to fundamental mode. And what that does is if I open up Scratch here, you see it says fundamental, and what that means is that rather than loading loads of stuff up, it just sets it to fundamental mode, so it makes it faster, basically. All right, then what we've got is our init.el here. So let's go through the init.el. So again, I've shamelessly ripped off some of this from System Crafters, who, if you're into Emacs, I'm sure you know about, and you follow along and catch some of the tips. So what we've got down here is the safe theme, and then the package, select packages. I believe that use package is going to be available natively in Emacs 29, but I don't use package because I find that it's difficult to translate stuff. You've got to translate stuff from the regular Emacs sort of config to using use package, so I don't use it. So every time you install a package, it's going to appear listed here. So when you start up Emacs, and for example, when we just built Emacs and we moved those, again, if you followed my advice, before you actually start up Emacs, the new version, you uninstalled your current version. And what you did was you removed these three directories, the ELN cache, ELPA, and transient to the desktop. And what happens is when you actually start up Emacs, it's actually going to say, do you want to install all these packages? And you just click yes, and it's going to download and install them. And one thing, if you're using Doom mode line, you also have to install all the icons and all the icons fonts. So you can see down here we've got the Doom mode line. After you've installed that, what you need to do is run all the icons install fonts, and that will actually download all the fonts required down here, all these nice little symbols, so that you can see here we've got EmacsLisp mode icon. So whatever file you open, it's going to show a appropriate icon. So that's all my packages that I actually use, all the icons, consult, Doom themes, Doom mode lines, EDNC. I did a video on that. That's the Emacs Desktop Notification Center. And what that means is you can actually disable GNOME's notification center and use Emacs instead. Much nicer. We got completion stuff like embark, consult. You got evil, fly check, Hydra, Magit, marginalia, MPV, open with, orderless. Vertigo. You need which key, YAML mode, and YouTube subextractor. What we got down here, just some general settings. Stuff, don't back up files opened with sudo. save place mode, and what this does is this saves the cursor position. So if you close a file, so if I close this file and reopen it, my cursor will be exactly the same position, which is really nice. Pixel precision mode, this is available in 29.2, and what this does is it actually gives you a smoother scrolling within Emacs. Let me just increase the size of this so a bit more. And this is some font setup I actually got from the Emacs from Scratch series, and I'm actually using Fedora code for my fonts here. What we've got here is the tab bar background, so you can actually style the tabs down here. So you can see I'm actually styling the tab so you can see the tab up here matches the color here. Just a little thing, but you know, the little things help. We've got the do mode line down here. And a useful setting is truncate except project, and what you can see down here is you can see this path would actually be config Emacs init.el, and what it does is it actually truncates the path here. So if you're in a really long directory, you know, the problem is the path can stretch all the way across here and push stuff across. So that actually truncates the path, and it will. So useful thing is it will actually show you, you know, the full path here, but truncate this bit. Okay, tab bar mode. So this is the tab bar up here, and these are the settings I use. By default, it has these horrible, ugly little buttons, so we actually get rid of those. We can set the default new tab choice, so we set that to Scratch. You can set that to anything you want, but Scratch is a good idea because with the trick of using fundamental mode, it just means it's going to open much faster. Create tab bars to the right, and this is how we actually set the tab bar menu bar button. So you can see here I've got the little alien emoji icon down there. So we set the tab bar format, put all this stuff in, all this crap here. And once we've done that, that will get rid of the actual menu, and you can put any icon here. It doesn't have to be an alien. But then we've got the menu come up here. So that's nice. So we don't disable the menu completely. One other thing, this only appears once you actually open the tabs. So when you open up Emacs, I'll show you what I mean. You can see here, as I've opened up Emacs, there's no menu. But if I press Control X T2, what you'll see here is it's opening the a new tab, and we get the menu there. Okay, so that's the tab bar. We've got some, you know, evil stuff down here. These are just some key bindings for diode mode, OB sync, which key, undo tree, open with. So that's how you can open files by associating an extension with an application. So you can see here, all these file types here are going to be opened with MPV with the --fs --fs screen equals 1 option. And what that will do is that will open any, so I've got two displays. I've got my laptop here, and then I've got the external display on a bigger screen. And what I want is whenever I open a video on the laptop, I automatically want it opened full screen on the second display on the main monitor. And it took a while to actually figure this option out with MPV, but this works with Wayland. So what this means is, as I said, whenever you open a file, it's going to open full screen on your main display, and that's from within Diode or any document, like an org document with a link. And then we've got PDFs, and I'm just opening them with events. So that's open with. We just got some general stuff here on setq, version control, backup. The pin tree, that's for when you're using GPG passwords. So what this will do is this will bring up the prompt within Emacs. And the reason why you want to use this is by default when you use GPG pin tree on sort of Linux, what will, on GNOME desktops, what will happen is it will come up with a GTK window to enter the password, but it won't let you paste into it. And that's really irritating if you've got a long password and you can't move away, you can't sort of, you have to exit the window to regain focus. So you want to use the EPA pin tree mode with the loopback there, so that if you open a file that's GPG encrypted, you'll actually get a prompt in Emacs here and you can actually paste in the password. This is just stuff for hiding stuff in the menu bar down here and setting the hours and minutes. So we've got hours and minutes down there. We can change the prompt to use short answers. Just seeing if there's anything else in here. Okay, digital company. We've got Vertigo. So this is the Vertigo completion and evil key bindings. Marginalia, consult, orderless, embark. These are just my general key maps, key map settings. So that's Magit status, a hippie expand. That's really nice. So if you press meta / it's going to autocomplete stuff. So how now? So if I type HO, I've got how now written in the file here. So if I now type how and press meta and / it will autocomplete to whatever's in there, and it's got a list of completion that it runs through, stuff like in the local directory or in the local file or different stuff. So if you keep pressing it, it will go through. You can see it's actually cycling through stuff. So hippie expands really nice. Now a couple of key map settings. Diode. So we come across to a new. So what I like to do with Diode is actually have a clean listing like this, so that it removes all the stuff you normally get, you know, all the listings, and I can press Control X Meta O to actually show and toggle hidden files like that. So I just prefer a nicer, clean sort of layout like that for Diode. Also, kill the current buffer when selecting a new directory to display into. So if you use Diode and you change lots of directories, it will create a new buffer for each one. With this option, it will just create one buffer, so you won't have loads of buffers for every directory that you've actually visited. Now this one's really useful. This is the Diode directory listing options for LS. What this does is this will list files 1 to 100. So normally, if you've got like a series of files called, you know, 01, 02, 03, you know, 10, whatever, it will list them with the zeros. So you'll get like 0, 1, 10, that kind of thing. So this will actually list them properly from 1 to 100. We've got the Diode emit mode, recursive delete and copy always, hide free space. So typically when you open Diode, if I switch back across here, when what will typically happen with dired is it will actually show you like up here, like free space equals, you know, X number of gig. You don't need that. So I hide that. DWM, yeah, this is how I hide the dot files, concat omit dot files. You can see here, this is the bit of code. So that's basically the hiding all the dot files and dired, and we can also hide the asynchronous output buffer as well that you get when you run asynchronous commands. Dired FD, yeah, so this is when you're using dired FD, you can actually get it to switch to the buffer automatically. When you FD is like the Rust version of find, and what happens is by default it will create a split the window in half and show you the results here, but your cursor will still be in this buffer, and you manually have to, you know, Control X, Control O to switch to this buffer. So what this does is it basically shifts the cursor automatically into the buffer when you run dired FD, which is, you know, handy. And I think I've got the same thing down here for ripgrep as well. Then we got tramp. So another thing with tramp is you can get issues with tramp and the ZSH shell. So what I actually do is set the shell to be used by tramp to binsh. You don't need to use the ZSH shell within tramp. It's not going to offer any benefits really. So just set the shell to binsh. We've got we've got org mode down here. Just some regular org stuff. Okay, org open files. Mutt. Some ad hooks. Get which one these are. Yeah, so this is useful. Make shebang. So what this will do is if you create a text file with a shebang in it, you know, binsh, bin bash, whatever, when you save it, it will actually make that file executable automatically. So that's quite nice. Visual line mode. H1 line mode. This is the H1 line mode, and I forget what I did, why I had that in there, but it's there for a reason. And then what we've got down here is my config for mpv.el, which I covered in a bit in another video. And mpv.el will allow you to control mpv from within Emacs, and you can actually have a Hydra that comes up and will actually let you control Emacs, will let you control MPV, fast forward, pause, stop, that kind of thing. And it's a really useful tool. So that's all that. And what I've got is actually this is code modified from the org timer so that it works to the millisecond. And finally, we've got the MPV commands down here. Like take a screenshot, show the OSD. This is the Hydra, and I covered all this in a previous video, but you can see this is the menu that come up. Seek backwards, forwards, back frame, forwards, pause, quit. What we can also do is use it to insert the current playback position into a document, and that's really useful if you're going through and you're wanting to make notes of particular positions in a video. You can have an org file open and you can control MPV and insert the playhead position into the document with milliseconds, so you've got the bang on position that you actually want in the video. And these are all the keyboard shortcuts. And finally, we've got YouTube extractor that I covered in a previous video, and what that allows you to do is put in a link for a YouTube video and it'll actually extract the subtitles into a document. And you can use this in combination with mpv.el, so that what you can actually do is have the transcript for a YouTube video with all the timestamps and all the text. And you can open the YouTube video with MPV and then jump to any position. You can search through the document, you know, I suppose something like football, you can search through and search for the word goal, you know, and you can then jump to that exact point in the video. So that's really nice. That's another nice package. And then finally, we've got the Emacs Desktop Notification Center. And again, I covered that in the video as well. And what that allows you to do is use Emacs as a desktop notification center instead of GNOME. Because the issue with GNOME is the notifications that actually come up here in these little boxes, they'll come up and the text will be truncated. It'll be, you know, like an ellipse, and you click on it thinking that that will then show it and let you see the thing, but it will actually dismiss it. So the notification center in GNOME is terrible. It's completely useless because you can't see a list of the previous notifications or anything. Whereas with Emacs, what you can do, you actually have a buffer that will actually show all the recent notifications, and you can also, it also comes up with an image and all this kind of nice stuff. But that's just some notes on my setup, my early init and init, and again, Fedora Emacs build. So again, those are all the steps. Let me just close these out. So that's this document here. And while I've actually got this open, I should do a video on this, but there's a couple of other notes I've made about Fedora. So this is actually how I got the Broadcom drivers working on my MacBook Air 2011. I had issues with that, and these are the steps to go through and install the Broadcom driver. And I've also got some notes on setting up Unbound. Let me just see, what's the thingy called? So that's basically setting up Unbound with DNSSEC trigger. Forget where the... Let me just come across to Unbound just to show you. Yeah, DNS leak test. And what this will do is it will just return one server. And that's the DNS leak test. DNSSEC. It's also using DNSSEC. DNSSEC test. No, this isn't Emacs, but I think this is the one that there's a site that will actually show you if DNSSEC is working properly. I can't remember if it's this one or not. No, it's not. Are you using DNSSEC? I think it's the one with the thumb, like a thumb. That's not going to load in the demo. Let me see if I've got... Okay, hang on. We've refreshed that. Yes, you are using DNSSEC. So that's just some notes on Fedora, and also on setting up Virt Manager. So Virt Manager was also really easy to set up on Fedora. So I'll maybe cover this in some other videos, but this was about Emacs 30. And you can see this is how I like things listed in sort of diode, nice, clean and simple. So yeah, Emacs 30, it's worth doing. You have much nicer font rendering for a kickoff. You can see how really nice and sharp this text is as I zoom in. Much nicer than the sort of default non-Wayland version, the version running under X-Wayland. It's also super snappy at opening stuff up. and see if I can get the. I've got the scrolling. You can see how smooth this scrolling is. You know, normally with Emacs it kind of jumps. This is the pixel smooth scrolling that was introduced in Emacs 29.2. You can see that's really nice. And let me just come across Reddit Emacs 29.2. See if I can find the. Yeah, here we go. This is the one. So this was from 12 days ago. Emacs 29 is at least several weeks away. So they're actually doing some pre-tests on Emacs 29 before it's released. But I was running Emacs 28 and there was just some features in 29 and 30 that I'd got used to. And I wasn't sure if, you know, even if the 29 branch did come out, if it would actually make it into Fedora 38 or Ubuntu 2304. So I wanted to build it manually because I've tried some of the other methods, like as I said, using Nix PKGs and snaps, and building it yourself is really quick. So the only difference between different versions of Linux is the actual packages that you're going to need to install. But if I switch back here, Emacs, git Emacs. So this is the Emacs repository that I cloned, and in here what you'll find is two files, install and install repo. Install repo is for building and installing Emacs from the repository. So again, you know, git clone, it's actually telling you some of the things you need here, autoconf, git make info, is going through some of the actual steps you need to do. But if you come across into the install, what you'll find is on line like 181, 84, this is a list of the image libraries that you want to install, and using the steps that I showed you, it should automatically install all of these image libraries. But what I did was I just manually installed them all just to make sure. So we get support for PNG, JPEG, TIFF, GIF, SVG, and WebP as well. So have a look through this. So this is like the basic installation. This is for manually downloading a particular version. You know, you can manually download, you know, 29.2 or whatever as a tar file, but I'm just using the master branch. So this is just some of the steps, and you can see here some of the stuff that I mentioned here about after you run source /Emacs -Q to actually test it's actually working. So these are some of the sort of steps, but the main one was actually the image libraries that you wanted. So I'll put links to all this under the video. But again, the important things, so I've gone through all these sort of steps, but these are the packages, and you know, you may find some of this stuff different on different versions of Linux. So all these package names are completely different on Fedora than Debian and Ubuntu, but the general gist of everything's the same. So the main thing was actually on Fedora is this step, installing the development tools, and then this DNF build dep Emacs. I think there is on I don't think he mentions in this step here. Yeah, build essential. I think there is a build dependency option or something. Build depends on Ubuntu and Debian distributions. Let's have a little look. Ubuntu, I think it's build depends or something like that. Yeah. build depends, yeah. So what you can actually do on Ubuntu, you can see this line here. We've got sudo dnf, which is the package manager of Fedora, build depends, and build dep Emacs. The equivalent step on Ubuntu would be sudo apt build dep Emacs, I believe. Build depends. Yeah, it's build depends, I think, yeah. So have a search for that. So what I found was you may need to run build essential and then something like build depends Emacs on Ubuntu. So you need to do a little search on that. But generally, this document is still recommended on Reddit for actually getting everything working. And as you can see, it's actually the pgtk. It's actually the first result in Google. So I hope that helps you out. As I said, there are various other ways of installing Emacs. You know, you can use Nix PKGs, you can use Copper on Fedora, you could use the Arch repository. On Arch, you could use a snap, which actually worked pretty well. 29 worked really well, but when I last tried 30, it didn't. So if you're on Ubuntu, you could, and you want the latest version of Emacs, you could use Emacs Snap. The only difference that I could notice was the Emacs directory didn't follow the XGG specifications, and you would have a .emacs.d directory in your home directory, and it wouldn't pick up files from .config Emacs. So that's the only difference that I noticed with the Snap version. But again, just do a search for Emacs pgtk. You'll find some notes. If you actually come across to YouTube, pgtk, there are yeah, of course, you get my one come up first. Or if you do build Emacs, I think it was build Emacs. Yeah, so there's actually a couple of videos up here. There's one by Timothy Urquhart. Brent Westbrook has got a couple of actually building Emacs with native compilation, and libgccjit from the R, from the AUR. This one's actually building Emacs 28 on a Chromebook. Yeah, and there's another one from Brent down there. So there's not actually that many on building Emacs that I actually came across that were actually any use to me in setting this up on Fedora. They were more specific to using the Arch user repository and using someone else's package. But building this from source, literally, it's really, really quick. But again, the speed of compiling everything and building everything will depend on your computer. But as I say, what I would recommend doing is, first of all, uninstalling Emacs, your current version, then moving these 3 directories. You see these 3 blue directories, move those to your desktop. Follow the steps through on Linux. You know, if you're not on Fedora, you're going to have to go through and change some stuff, but this should give you the general outline of, you know, the steps that you need to do. Make sure you do this step here so that Emacs can find the location of GCC. Otherwise, it may fail to find libgccjit for the native compilation. Autogen configure help see what options you want. But again, the I'll show you in here. It's actually easier. Oops, no, I don't want to delete that. So which bit were we looking at here? Configure. So yeah, these were the configure options I used. Most of these I think should be the default, but I'm just specifying them anyway. but the important ones that you're going to want to use are with modules. You want with modules, and you're going to need that if you want to install the vterm terminal with native compilation. I actually saw some people put this down as with native comp. It's not, it's with native compilation with pgtk, and with the without pop option. That basically means we don't set it up with any mail, because as I said, if you install Emacs 28.2 on Ubuntu 23.04, it will actually install postfix. It will actually install a whole load of stuff. So that's another thing. But basically, everything is going to be installed in user local, so it's not actually going to mix in with your other things are installed. As I said, Emacs is installed in user local bin, as you can see here, as I showed you. Emacs client. So if you've got any scripts or anything, you may need to put in the full path to the Emacs client. For example, user local bin Emacs client, and the desktop files were actually user local share application. So you can see here we've got the Emacs client, mail, Emacs desktop, and these will not show up in GNOME. So if I just bring across here, this is the Emacs client desktop file that I created in my local share applications, and you can see there's no other Emacs launchers listed there. So it doesn't actually, GNOME doesn't actually pick up these files here, so you will actually need to copy those to local share applications. As you can see here, Emacs client.desktop. I'll show you the local share applications Emacs client.desktop. So this is the desktop entry that is actually generated, but I'm just using one that looks like this. Use a local bin Emacs client -c whatever it was, local share applications. So you can see here's my one, bit simpler, user local share bin Emacs client -cf, but you could use this one as well. It'll do the same thing, I would imagine, but that's just where things get installed. And I presume you can just do a git pull and sort of basically run it again. I think it will actually automatically remember all the options, so I'll have to do another video when I do an update. But I'd imagine it's something just like doing a git pull and configure and make again, and that should install the latest version. And if there's any issues with a build not working, you can also always pull down a specific release of Emacs and sort of build it. But overall, this is much better than the 28.2 version that ships on Fedora. That is a GTK application, but not a pure GTK application. It's running under wayland, and yeah, this is super snappy. We get nice features like the pixel scrolling, the menu, the wayland support, compilation of the Lisp files and everything. So it's really worth doing, rather than waiting for a new release of Emacs, which may be several weeks away, for 29.2. Again, I don't know if that's going to actually appear. You may need to actually wait for the next release of Ubuntu or Fedora 39. Oh, my tea's gone cold. So yeah, the only thing that actually takes a long time is actually cloning the repository. That takes maybe 6 or 7 minutes to clone the full repository. I think you can use a --depth1 option, but I didn't do that. And make, you can specify the number of cores you want, or you can just use this dollar, parentheses mproc option, and that will use all your cores to build everything. And that's using 12 cores on this Dell XPS 15 with 16 gig of RAM, and it literally took about 5 minutes. I was amazed. I thought I was going to be one of those ones where you have to leave it running overnight, but no. Once I got everything set up, didn't get any errors during the build process, so there's no errors. Just make sure to run Emacs like that, source /Emacs-Q. Make sure it's working. You can check the native comp is all working. Once everything's working, just install it. And then what I would actually recommend doing is you want to start, after you've built Emacs and got it installed, don't start the Emacs client. What you actually want to do is just run Emacs in the terminal. So it won't have a desktop file unless you've copied across. Just run Emacs in the terminal, press return, it'll start up, and what will happen is it'll say, do you want to install all these packages? Just click yes. It will install everything. Once you've done that, you can copy across the desktop files so that you've actually got a Emacs client there. Bang, you can see really nice and snappy. Keyboard shortcut again. So let me just go for the keyboard shortcut in GNOME. Okay, where's the keyboard? View and customize shortcuts, Emacs client. So as you can see here, this is the custom shortcut I use to open Emacs client. Name Emacs client, command Emacs client -C, and I'll bind that to Control Super and return. So you can then just bang, and that comes up. And again, the other thing to remember is, as you can see, I disabled the menu, and the menu won't appear until you open the tab. So Control X T2, and you can see now here we've got the scratch pads and we've got that. And I also set it so that when I close the last tab, it closes the menu bar. So if I close that, you can see if there's only one tab, it doesn't display the menu bar. So it only displays this when you've got two tabs open. But you can change that because there's Emacs and you can change whatever you want. So that's all the steps. Been rattling on for a while, but I just wanted to go through it in depth, and also the difference between the package names and everything. So I hope that helps out. It's really not too bad to actually go through all this. It is quite easy. Again, you're going to need to change a few things if you're on another distribution, but you might want to give Fedora a try. It's actually really nice. I've used Ubuntu, Debian, Arch, NixOS, FreeBSD, Mac, and it's really nice, really easy, user friendly. You do have to set up some repositories for non-free software, but it's been rock solid since I got it installed. Everything works. You get the latest version of all the software. And just haven't had any issues with it at all. So, this might also be a good option to try Fedora if you want to actually install the latest version of Emacs. You'll get the latest version of GNOME. You can see up here we've got all the latest stuff of GNOME. Everything comes in, so you can do this on Ubuntu or something else, but yeah, why not give Fedora a try? It's worth a look. So that's all for now. I'll stick links to all this under the video, and hopes that helps you get Emacs 30 built from master with pure GTK support for Wayland and native compilation. You've got all the nice new features like pixel scrolling, and I haven't tried Tree Sitter yet, but yeah, it's really nice. And one of the things it's so much nicer is the font rendering. It's incredible. It's really beautiful, and it looks much better than the Wayland version. So that's all for now. I'll put links to all this under the video, and give it a crack. And literally, you can do this under half an hour. Again, depending on the speed of your machine, and you'll have a really nice shiny version of Emacs. And I'll have to do another video about, you know, the update process, I think it should be pretty straightforward, just pulling stuff down and remaking it and installing it. So give it a go. It's definitely worth it, rather than waiting on you know, a new release coming out, or having to wait for the next version of Ubuntu or Fedora, or, you know, trying other methods like Copper or the AUR or Nix PKGs or snaps. Just build it yourself. It's not too much hassle. May look intimidating at first, but just go through. You know, you can just come through, copy and paste all these into the terminal, and you'll be good to go in about half an hour with Emacs 30. So that's all for now, and I'll stop recording.